She didn't knock. 5 years of being his wife had earned her that much, the right to walk into any room he occupied without announcing herself first. So she didn't. She just walked in. 3 suitcases behind her. Divorce papers folded neatly inside her bag. And a silence around her so complete it felt louder than anything she could have screamed. He was sitting there. Hyuk. Her husband. The man she had loved so completely she'd once told God she didn't need anything else as long as she had him. And Isabel was beside him. Not across the room. Not at a respectful distance. Beside him. Close enough that their shoulders touched. Close enough that his hand was resting relaxed, unbothered on the cushion right next to hers. Close enough that Stephanie understood, in an instant, every late night, every unreturned call, every cold dinner she had eaten alone. She stood there for exactly 3 seconds. Then she turned around. Didn't cry. Didn't speak. Didn't give either of them the satisfaction of watching her fall apart. She just walked away. And somehow, that was the most devastating thing she had ever done to him. My queens. Welcome to Epic Romance Stories. On today's episode, you get a dose of betrayal, power, romance, love, unexpected encounters, and a beautiful beginning. If this is your first time here, make sure to like, subscribe, click the notification icon to get a reminder when new amazing stories drop, and share this story to friends and family who you think would love to watch it. And also tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. I love knowing where my girls are. Now, let's dive back into this amazing story. Stephanie Matthew was not a woman who fell in love recklessly. She was Texas-born, Texas-raised, the kind of woman who said what she meant what she said, and loved with everything she had once she decided you were worth it. She was careful. She was grounded. She took her time with people. Until John Hyuk. She met him at 23, at a rooftop event in Houston that she almost didn't attend. He was standing near the railing with a glass of whiskey, looking like he belonged somewhere more important and was merely tolerating the room. Dark suit. Thin-framed glasses. A jaw that could cut glass. He looked expensive in a way that had nothing to do with money. It was the way he carried himself. Like the world owed him patience and he was waiting for it to pay up. She wasn't impressed. Not immediately. She actually found him a little arrogant. Then he laughed at something someone said, a real laugh, quiet and unexpected, and something in her chest moved without permission. They talked for 2 hours that night. She found out he was Korean, based in Seoul, in the import and export business. He found out she was a graphic designer from San Antonio with a weakness for spicy food and old R&B records. By the end of the night, he had her number, and she had a feeling she couldn't name. Within a year, she was in Seoul. Within 2, she was his wife. What Stephanie didn't know, what he never told her until the ring was already on her finger, was that John Hyuk didn't run imports and exports. Not exactly. He ran the John Syndicate, one of the most powerful criminal organizations in all of South Korea. Men feared his name. Deals were made and broken based on a single call from him. The penthouse they lived in wasn't just luxury, it was a fortress. The bodyguards she thought were simply security staff? They answered to a chain of command she was never meant to understand. But here is the thing about Hyuk that nobody talks about, the part that makes this story complicated. In the beginning, he loved her. Not performed love. Not convenient love. Real, quiet, consuming love. He came home for dinner. He learned how to make her laugh. He held her when Seoul felt too foreign and too cold, and she missed Texas in a way that sat in her bones. He was present. And for a woman like Stephanie, presence was everything. So she stayed. Even after she found out the truth about what he was. She told herself she could love the man separate from the monster the world saw. She told herself that what they had was real enough to survive anything. She didn't know yet that what would eventually break them had nothing to do with the syndicate. It had to do with an empty nursery. 2 years into the marriage, Stephanie got pregnant. For exactly 11 weeks, she was the happiest she had ever been in her life. She started buying things, tiny things, soft things. She'd sit in the room they'd turned into a nursery and just breathe, imagining the version of their life that was almost here. Then she lost the baby. Hyuk held her that night. He didn't say anything. He just held her. And for a moment she thought, we will survive this. We are strong enough. But grief does strange things to people, especially to men who have never been taught how to sit inside pain without fixing it. Hyuk started pulling away slowly, so slowly she almost didn't notice. He stopped initiating the conversations that used to keep them up past midnight. He stopped reaching for her the way he used to. Then she got pregnant again. And lost that one too. After the third loss, something shifted in his eyes. He never said it's your fault. He was not cruel that way. But the tenderness, that specific, particular warmth he used to look at her with began to disappear. Like a light dimming so gradually you don't realize the room is dark until you can't see anything at all. She blamed herself. She booked more appointments. She tried new things. She prayed. She stayed. What she did not know, what she could not know, was that across the city, in a world she had never been invited into, someone else was filling the spaces Hyuk was leaving empty. Someone she already trusted with her life. And that particular wound, that one, was still 3 months away from splitting her completely open. Stephanie wasn't the type to snoop. That wasn't her. She had too much self-respect for that, too much dignity to go digging through a man's pockets looking for evidence of what her gut was already telling her for free. She believed that if something was meant to be found, God would put it directly in her path. And that is exactly what he did. It was a Tuesday. Ordinary Tuesday. She had cooked jollof rice the way she'd learned to make it, with the smoky bottom that Hyuk used to scrape the pot for. She'd set the table, lit a candle, told herself tonight would be different. Tonight he would come home and sit across from her, and they would find their way back to each other the way they always somehow managed to. He didn't come home. She called once, twice. Third time it rang out completely. She turned off the stove, covered the pot, blew out the candle, and went to bed telling herself it was syndicate business. It was always syndicate business. She had learned to make peace with that, the late nights, the unanswered calls, the bodyguard who would text her, "Mr. John is held up, ma'am," like she was a business contact and not the woman who slept in his bed. She almost made peace with it that night too. Almost. Around 1 a.m. she woke up reaching for him out of habit, and the cold, empty space beside her did something to her chest it hadn't done in a while. She picked up her phone before she even thought about it. Called him again. It rang twice. Then someone picked up. Not Hyuk. A woman. No greeting. No explanation. Just the soft ambient sound of wherever they were, low music, the clink of something glass, and a woman's quiet breathing on the other end of the line. Stephanie didn't speak. The woman didn't speak. 3 seconds of silence that stretched like 3 years. Then Stephanie hung up. She set the phone face down on the mattress. Sat completely still in the dark for a long time. And something inside her, some last fragile thread of denial she had been holding onto with both hands, simply let go. She didn't know who the woman was. Not yet. She just knew. She knew the way women always know, not from proof, not from logic, but from something older and quieter that lives underneath both. My queens, pause right here with me for a second, because you know that feeling she's feeling right now. That moment when your body already knows the truth before your mind is ready to accept it. Have you ever been there? Have you ever known without a single piece of proof? Drop it in the comments right now, tell me your story. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it right now, because where this story is going next, you do not want to miss it. Okay, back to Stephanie. She knew it in the way the silence had felt too comfortable on the other end. Like the woman who answered wasn't startled, wasn't scrambling, wasn't afraid of being caught. Like she belonged exactly where she was. Stephanie didn't cry that night. She lay back down, pulled the covers up, and stared at the ceiling until morning came. When the sun finally filled the room, she got up, showered, made herself coffee, and called the one person she always called when the world felt like it was tilting. Isabel. Isabel Dennis had been her best friend for 8 years. They had met in college, 2 black girls from different states who bonded over bad dining hall food and a shared love of dramatic television. Isabel was the one who flew to Seoul with her when Stephanie moved. Isabel was the one who sat with her after each pregnancy loss and didn't try to fill the silence with useless words. Isabel was bold where Stephanie was measured, loud where Stephanie was quiet, the kind of friend who said the things you needed to hear even when you desperately didn't want to hear them. Leave him, Steph. She had been saying it for nearly 2 years by that point. I'm serious. You are too beautiful and too brilliant to be sitting in a penthouse in Seoul feeling invisible. Leave him. And every time, Stephanie had said the same thing. I love him it's just a rough season. We'll find our way back. Isabel would go quiet for a beat. Then, okay, babe. I'm here either way. Always. Every time. I'm here either way. So Stephanie called her that morning and told her about the phone call. The woman. The silence. The 3 seconds that changed everything. And Isabel said, "Oh, baby. I'm so sorry." Her voice was soft. Careful. The way you speak to someone standing too close to the edge of something. At the time, Stephanie thought it was empathy. She was still 2 months away from understanding what it actually was. Because life didn't stop for Stephanie's heartbreak. Hyuk still came home some nights. He still slept in their bed occasionally. But something had shifted in the architecture of their marriage, and they both knew it. He stopped eating at home almost entirely. When she asked where he'd been, he gave her short answers. Corporate. Meetings. Business in Busan. She stopped pushing. Not because she believed him, but because some part of her wasn't ready yet to hear the truth out loud, wasn't ready for the moment it stopped being suspicion and became undeniable fact. That moment came on a Thursday evening she had not prepared for. He walked through the front door around 9 p.m., which was actually early for him lately, loosening his tie, not really looking at her. She was sitting on the couch with a book she hadn't actually been reading for an hour. She watched him set his jacket over the back of the chair. Something fell out of the pocket. A folded piece of paper. He didn't notice. He walked to the kitchen, opened the fridge, stood there like a man looking for something he already knew wasn't there. Stephanie set down her book. Walked to the chair. Picked up the paper. She didn't unfold it dramatically. Didn't make a show of it. She just opened it quietly, the way you open something when you already know what's inside and you're only doing it to confirm what your body has been telling you for months. It was a note. Handwritten. Small loopy letters on cream paper that smelled faintly of perfume. Last night was everything. Don't make me wait so long next time. No name. She folded it back exactly the way she'd found it. Set it back on the chair. Sat back down on the couch. Picked up her book. Hyuk came out of the kitchen, glanced at her, said nothing. She said nothing. But the decision that had been forming quietly in the back of her soul for months, the one she'd been refusing to look at directly, finally stepped all the way into the light. She was leaving. Not tonight. Not in anger. Not in tears or noise or the kind of confrontation that lets a man feel powerful even in his wrongdoing. She was leaving on her own terms. With her head up. With paperwork. With every suitcase she owned. She just needed a little more time to get ready. And in that time, in those final quiet weeks, she made one call she shouldn't have made. She called Isabel. Told her everything. The note. The perfume. The decision. And Isabel said, "I'll be there for you through all of it. Every step." What Stephanie still didn't know, what was about to shatter her in a way that cheating alone never could, was that Isabel already knew about the note. Because Isabel had written it. The day Stephanie left, she woke up before sunrise. She didn't set an alarm. Her body just knew. Like it had been waiting, counting down quietly for weeks, and when the morning finally came it simply said today. She lay still for a moment in the dark, listening to Hyuk breathe beside her. Even now, even after everything, there was something about the sound of him that made her chest ache. She had loved this man so completely. That was the part nobody would understand from the outside. They would see the suitcases and assume anger. They would see the divorce papers and assume hatred. But Stephanie wasn't leaving in rage. She was leaving in grief. And grief is so much heavier than anger. Anger gives you energy, gives you fire, gives you something to push against. Grief just sits in your chest like wet concrete and makes every single movement cost more than it should. She got up anyway. She packed the first suitcase quietly, methodically. Clothes she'd bought herself before she ever met him. Her grandmother's jewelry. The skincare she'd shipped from the States because nothing in Seoul worked on her skin the same way. She didn't take anything he'd given her. Not the jewelry. Not the bags. Not a single thing that had his money in it. She wanted to leave with exactly what she came with. By the second suitcase, she was moving faster. Not frantically, just purposefully. The way you move when your mind is made up and your body has finally agreed. She pulled things from shelves and drawers without second-guessing herself. Each item she packed felt like a small act of reclamation. This is mine. This is mine. This is mine. The third suitcase almost broke her. Not because of what she packed in it, but because of what she found at the bottom of her wardrobe while reaching for her boots. A small white box she had forgotten existed. She opened it without thinking. Inside was the hospital bracelet from her first pregnancy. Tiny, folded, kept without realizing she was keeping it. She sat down on the floor of her own wardrobe, held that bracelet in both hands, and allowed herself exactly 5 minutes. 5 minutes to feel all of it, the babies she lost, the husband who withdrew, the best friend who betrayed her, the 5 years of loving someone so hard she had nearly disappeared inside it. 5 minutes. Then she folded it back up, placed it gently in the suitcase, and stood up. She was done. She didn't leave a note. She had thought about it, had even started writing one at 2 a.m. 2 nights before, sitting at the kitchen counter in the dark. But every sentence she wrote felt like it was still trying to explain herself to a man who had stopped being curious about her long before she stopped trying. So she deleted it. Every word. He didn't deserve an explanation. He deserved the silence. The same silence he had been handing her for 2 years. She called a car, loaded her 3 suitcases. And then, she didn't know why, some last involuntary pull of muscle memory, she drove to the one place she should not have gone. She went to tell Isabel goodbye. She hadn't called ahead. That wasn't unusual between them. They had 8 years of showing up unannounced, of walking into each other's spaces like they owned them. Stephanie had a key. She'd had it for 2 years. She used it. The apartment was quiet when she stepped inside. Lights low. She could hear the soft sound of a television somewhere in the back. She set her bag down near the door and called out. It's me. I know I should have called, but I needed to see you before She stopped. She heard something. Voices. Not the television. She followed the sound down the short hallway, the one she had walked 100 times, the one that led to the sitting room that Isabel had decorated with plants and framed photos of the two of them, and she pushed the door open. They didn't hear her come in. Hyuk was on the couch. Jacket off. Glasses slightly pushed up the way they always went when he was relaxed. And Isabel was beside him, tucked into his side with the kind of easy comfort that only comes from time. From repetition. From choosing each other over and over again in rooms where no one was watching. His hand was in her hair. Not passionately. Not dramatically. Just resting there. Natural. Familiar. Like it belonged. Stephanie stood in the doorway. For a moment, just one, the whole world went very quiet and very still. She took in every detail without meaning to. The way Isabel's shoes were by the coffee table the same way she always kicked them off. The 2 glasses on the side table. The low light. The television playing something neither of them was watching. And then Hyuk turned his head. He saw her. His face did something she had never seen it do before. Every wall he had, and John Hyuk had many walls, collapsed simultaneously. In 1 second, he was the most powerful man she had ever known. In the next, he was just a man caught in the worst moment of his life, looking at the one person whose opinion of him actually mattered. He sat up. Stephanie. She held up one hand. Just one hand. Flat. Steady. And she turned around and walked back down the hallway. Picked up her bag from near the door. Stepped out into the corridor. Let the door close quietly behind her, no slam, no drama. Nothing he could point to later and say she was hysterical, she was unstable. Just a door. Closing softly. Like a chapter ending the way it should. In the elevator going down, she looked at her own reflection in the mirrored walls. Gold hair. Steady eyes. 3 suitcases waiting downstairs in a car. Divorce papers in her bag. She looked at herself for a long time. You're still here, she thought. You're still whole. She almost believed it. What happened next? Hyuk standing up so fast he knocked the glasses off the table. Hyuk riding the elevator down 30 seconds behind her only to watch the car pull away. Hyuk calling her 17 times before midnight. Hyuk showing up at the airport and being told by her bodyguard, the one she'd quietly hired 2 weeks ago, the one who answered to her, that Mrs. John was unavailable. Unavailable. His own wife. She flew back to Texas without looking back once. She gave herself 30 days. 30 days to breathe Texas air and eat her mother's food and sleep in the bedroom she grew up in and remember who she was before Seoul. Before Hyuk. Before the version of herself that had spent 5 years shrinking to fit inside someone else's silence. She didn't take his calls. She didn't read his messages, well, she didn't respond to them. She was human. She read them. Every single one. At 2 a.m. sometimes, curled up in her childhood bed with the phone too close to her face, reading words from a man who had apparently rediscovered his ability to say "I love you" the moment she was no longer in the same country as him. I'm sorry, Stephanie. I know I broke us. I know it was me. Please just let me explain. I need you to know that what you saw, it wasn't what it became. I know that doesn't make sense. Just please pick up. She put the phone down every time. Picked it up again an hour later. That was the part she hated most, that even now, even with everything she knew, there was a piece of her that was still listening for him. Still turning toward him the way a plant turns toward light out of pure instinct even when the light is doing damage. She hated that piece of herself. She was working on it. On day 31, she went for a walk. Just a walk. Her neighborhood, early morning, the kind of Texas heat that wraps around you like something alive. She had her earbuds in, no destination, just movement. Just proof that she could exist in space without his name taking up all the room in her chest. She was so deep in her own thoughts, she almost didn't notice the man. He was standing outside the coffee shop 2 blocks from her mother's house, tall, Korean, no glasses, dark hair that fell slightly across his forehead. Black shirt. The kind of face that made you look twice without knowing why. He was looking at his phone, frowning slightly at whatever was on the screen, and as she passed, he glanced up. Their eyes met for exactly 1 second. He looked away first. Back to his phone. Unbothered. She kept walking. But something made her slow down half a block later. Something she couldn't name. She turned back once, just once, and he was already gone. Inside the shop or down another street, she couldn't tell. She shook her head at herself. Put her earbuds back in. Kept walking. She didn't know his name. She didn't know that he had not ended up outside that coffee shop by accident. And she had absolutely no idea, not even the smallest suspicion, that the man she had just walked past carried the same last name as the husband she was trying to forget. She filed the divorce papers on a Wednesday. No ceremony around it. No dramatic moment. She sat at her mother's kitchen table with a cup of coffee going cold beside her, signed her name in 4 places, and slid the envelope across to her attorney over a video call like she was approving a design brief. Calm. Measured. Done. Her mother watched from the doorway and didn't say anything. Just walked over, squeezed her shoulder once, and went back to the kitchen. That was the most comforting thing anyone had done for her in months, not making it bigger than it needed to be. Not filling the air with words that couldn't fix anything. Stephanie appreciated silence now. Real silence. The chosen kind. Not the kind that gets handed to you by a man who stopped seeing you. The papers reached Hyuk on a Friday. She knew because her attorney called to confirm. And then, 11 minutes later, her phone lit up with his name, and she watched it ring and ring and ring until it stopped. Then started again. Then stopped. She poured the cold coffee down the sink and made herself a fresh cup. She was going to be okay. She knew that now in a way she hadn't known it 30 days ago. It wasn't loud knowing, it wasn't the kind that comes with music and montages and a sudden burst of confidence. It was quiet. Settled. The kind that lives in your stomach instead of your head and doesn't need to announce itself. She was going to be okay. What she didn't know was that 3 things were happening simultaneously on the other side of the world that were about to make okay significantly more complicated. John Hyuk had not slept properly in 31 days. His men noticed. His lieutenants noticed. The entire upper floor of the John Syndicate headquarters had quietly recalibrated around the mood of a man who was running a criminal empire on 4 hours of sleep and an amount of whiskey that was becoming a topic of private concern. He sat at his desk now, soul spread out behind him through the floor-to-ceiling glass, and stared at the divorce papers his attorney had just placed in front of him. He didn't touch them. He just looked at them the way you look at a consequence you created yourself and somehow still cannot believe is real. Because here was the truth about John Hyuk that he had never said out loud to another living person, not his lieutenants, not Isabel, not anyone. The truth was that he had never stopped loving Stephanie. Not for a single day. What happened with Isabel was not love. It was not even close to love. It was a man drowning in guilt and grief over babies he couldn't save and a wife he didn't know how to face anymore, reaching for the nearest thing that didn't look at him with the particular pain he saw in Stephanie's eyes every time she thought he wasn't watching. He had been a coward. He knew that. He had chosen the easier thing instead of fighting for the real thing. And now the real thing was in Texas, signing her name in 4 places, and he was sitting here with papers he couldn't make himself touch, because touching them meant agreeing that this was where they ended. He picked up his phone, put it back down, picked it up again. Then he did something that surprised even himself. He didn't call Stephanie. He called his younger brother, John Tay. "I need you to do something for me," he said, when Tay picked up. "And I need you to not ask me too many questions about it." There was a pause on the other end. "Then, does this have to do with Stephanie?" Hyuk said nothing, which was its own kind of answer. Another pause. Then Tay said, "Tell me what you need." Stephanie started working again on day 35. Small things at first, a logo refresh for a boutique her college friend owned, a branding package for a local bakery. She set up a corner of her childhood bedroom as a temporary studio, bought new markers and a drawing tablet, and spent long mornings doing what she had always done before Seoul made her feel like her own life was a side character in someone else's story. She made things. She created. She remembered that her hands knew how to build beauty without anyone's permission. It was on day 38, at the coffee shop 2 blocks from her mother's house, that she saw him again. The man from before. No glasses. Black shirt, different one this time, deep green. Same face. Same dark hair. He was at the counter ordering when she walked in, and he turned slightly as the door opened, the way people do, and their eyes met again. This time he didn't look away as quickly. He ordered. Moved to the side to wait. She went to the counter, ordered her usual, moved to the other side to wait. They stood maybe 6 feet apart in the small warm space and said nothing. Then he said, without looking directly at her, "You always come here this early?" His English was perfect. Slight accent underneath it, barely there. She glanced at him. "Usually. Good coffee. Good enough." He almost smiled. Not quite. Just the edge of it. Then his order came up, and he took it, and she thought that was going to be the entire conversation. He paused on his way to the door. "I'm Tay," he said. Simple. Like he wasn't offering anything more than that. She looked at him for a moment. "Stephanie." He nodded once. Like he was filing it away carefully. Then he pushed the door open and left. She watched him go. Something about him was familiar in a way she couldn't locate, not his face, not his voice. Something else. Something in the way he carried himself. Unhurried. Like a man who always knew exactly where he was going and didn't feel the need to perform it for anyone. She shook it off. Picked up her coffee when it came. Went to her usual corner table. Opened her tablet. Started working. She did not think about him again. Not much, anyway. He came back the next morning. And the morning after that. He never sat at her table uninvited. Never pushed for more than she offered. He would come in, order, catch her eye briefly, exchange maybe 3 or 4 sentences, easy sentences, nothing loaded, nothing that demanded anything from her, and then leave. On the 4th morning, he asked what she was working on. She turned the tablet toward him without thinking. He studied it for a moment. Genuinely. Not the performative interest of someone making conversation, the real kind, where the eyes actually move and the face actually changes. "You designed this?" "Working on it. The balance is good. The negative space especially." She blinked. "You know design?" "I know what works," he said simply. "And what doesn't." "That works." She didn't know why that landed the way it did. It wasn't even a grand compliment. But she had spent 5 years with a man who stopped noticing what she made, stopped asking, stopped looking, and something about being seen in the most ordinary way by a stranger in a coffee shop did something to her she wasn't prepared for. She looked back at her screen. "Thank you." He sat down. She didn't invite him. He didn't ask. He just sat, pulled out his own phone, started whatever he was working on. Quiet, present, not demanding anything from the air between them. They sat like that for 40 minutes. It was the most comfortable she'd felt with another person since before everything fell apart. That evening her attorney called. Hyuk had not signed the papers. She set the phone down slowly, stared at the wall of her bedroom for a long moment, then picked it back up. "What do you mean he hasn't signed?" "He's requested a 60-day extension, Mrs. John. He's filed for mediation. He doesn't get to do that. Technically in this jurisdiction, he has the right to request." She stopped listening after that. Not because she wasn't hearing the words, but because something else was happening underneath them, something she refused to name, but could feel pressing against the inside of her chest. He was fighting for her. Now. After everything. After Isabel. After the note. After the late nights and the cold dinners and the 17 unanswered calls. Now he wanted to fight. She was furious. She was also, and this was the part she would not tell a single soul, the smallest bit undone by it. She pushed it down, buried it under everything she knew to be true about what he had done and who she was and what she deserved. She called her attorney back. Push back. I want this finalized. Then she sat on the edge of her bed in the quiet and let herself feel, just for a minute, the full weight of loving someone who learned your value in the exact moment you finally decided to leave. The next morning, Tay was already at the coffee shop when she arrived. He had her order waiting at the counter. She stopped, looked at the cup, looked at him. How did you know what I drink? He lifted one shoulder slightly. I pay attention. She wanted to ask why. Why a man she'd known for less than 2 weeks who owed her nothing had been quietly paying attention to the kind of woman she was, the things she liked, the way she worked, the hours she kept. She wanted to ask what he wanted from her because men always wanted something and she was done with assumptions and surprises. Instead, she picked up the cup, sat down at her table. He sat across from her. And for the first time since she'd met him, she looked at him, really looked, and felt something shift. Not dramatically. Not like the movies. Just a small, warm tilt. Like a room getting 2 degrees warmer without anyone touching the thermostat. She didn't know his last name. She didn't know that the phone in his jacket pocket had 3 unread messages from his older brother. Messages that said, how is she? Is she okay? Does she look like she's okay? That he had been leaving unread since yesterday because he hadn't yet figured out how to answer them without lying. She didn't know that Tay was short for John Tae-young. She didn't know any of it yet. All she knew was that her coffee was exactly right. That the man across from her was looking at her work again, asking a real question about a font choice with genuine curiosity in his eyes. That outside the window Texas was golden and warm and alive. And that somewhere underneath all the grief and the betrayal and the paperwork and the 38 days of rebuilding herself from scratch, something in her was beginning, very quietly, to open again. She didn't know yet whether that was beautiful or dangerous. With John Tae-young, it was going to be both. And that, my queens, is where everything gets even more complicated. Because Hyuk was on a plane. He had left Seoul that morning without telling a single member of his syndicate where he was going. No security detail. No announcement. Just a man with a carry-on bag and a set of unsigned divorce papers and the particular desperation of someone who has finally understood, too late, possibly too late, exactly what he threw away. He was coming to Texas. And his brother was already there. Neither of them knew the other had chosen the same woman to fight for in completely different ways. But Stephanie was about to find herself standing between 2 John men. One who broke her. And one who, without even meaning to, was already starting to heal her. The question, my queens, the one that's going to keep you up tonight, is this. When she finds out who Tae really is, will she see it as fate? Or will she see it as one final, unforgivable setup? Drop your answer in the comments right now. I want to know, are you Team Hyuk or are you Team Tae? And be honest, did you see that twist coming? If this story wrecked you in the best way, make sure you're subscribed because part 2 is coming and I promise you, it starts exactly where your heart is most vulnerable. Like this video, share it with a friend who deserves a good story today, and tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. My queens, thank you for being here. I'll see you in part 2.